The rain came down like sheets of ice that night, the kind that makes every step feel heavier and colder. Marissa pushed forward through the darkness, her bare feet sinking into mud, her breath short and uneven. 8 months pregnant, she clutched her belly as if holding on to the last piece of hope she had left. Her hair was drenched, her clothes torn, her lip bleeding, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Behind her were the echoes of pain, the shadow of a man she once trusted but now feared more than the storm itself. Every heartbeat reminded her she wasn't running for herself anymore. She was running for her baby's life. The world around her was cruel and merciless, but somewhere inside her chest burned a single, fragile belief that if she could just keep moving, she might find a place where kindness still existed. Through the heavy rain, Marissa saw a faint flicker of neon light cutting through the darkness. The Devil's Disciples Bar. The name alone would have sent most people running the other way, but fear had already taken everything from her. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, the sound echoing through the smoky room as every head turned toward her. The men inside looked like they'd stepped out of a world of danger. Leather jackets, tattoos, cold eyes that had seen too much. For a moment, no one moved. She stood there, trembling, water dripping from her hair, her hands gripping her belly, as though it might shield her from judgment. A silence filled the room that felt heavier than the storm outside. Then, with a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "Please, I need help." And somehow, that plea began to soften hearts thought too hard to ever change. Core. Among the men watching her stood Reed, the leader of the club, a man whose presence alone could silence a crowd. His beard was streaked with gray, his arms covered in ink that told stories no one dared ask about. Reed had seen more loss than most men could bear. A brother buried too young, a daughter he hadn't seen in years, and a lifetime of mistakes that weighed on him like chains. Key had spent the last few years trying to rebuild what was broken, to turn his biker club from a symbol of chaos into one of loyalty. But that night, when he saw Marissa standing there, soaked, shaking, and terrified, something stirred in him that he hadn't felt in a long time. Beneath the rough exterior, the man who had stopped believing in redemption suddenly saw a chance for it standing right in front of him. As Marissa sat shivering in the corner, the men slowly gathered around, unsure what to do. Reed handed her a towel and a cup of water, his rough voice gentler than anyone expected. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with exhaustion and fear. She told them about Carl, the man who promised her love but delivered pain, who turned their home into a prison the moment she became pregnant. That night, she'd run because he'd sworn she'd never leave alive. The room fell silent. No one spoke, but every man there understood what it meant to face demons. Reed looked at his crew, then back at her. "She stays here tonight," he said firmly. No one argued. In that moment, the bikers didn't see a stranger. They saw someone worth protecting, a reminder that even in the darkest places, compassion could still find its way through. Hours slipped by, the storm outside easing into a soft drizzle when suddenly the sound of a truck skidding to a halt shattered the calm. Headlights cut through the rain, blinding and angry. Reed's instincts kicked in. Something was coming. The door burst open, and there he was, Carl, drenched, wild-eyed, shouting for his wife. His rage filled the room like thunder. The bikers stood up, forming a silent wall between him and the back office, where Marissa hid. Reed stepped forward, steady, unflinching. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low but dangerous. Carl snarled, lunging forward, but before he could reach her, the men held him back. Reed's jaw tightened as he stared into the eyes of the man who'd caused so much pain. "Not anymore," he said quietly. "You lost that right when you hurt her." In that moment, justice finally found its voice. Days passed, and the storm eventually faded into memory. Marissa stayed until she could stand on her own again, and the men who once lived by toughness alone began to find peace in small acts of kindness: a meal shared, a car fixed, a promise made. When she was ready to leave, Reed handed her an address folded inside his calloused palm, telling her she'd never be alone again. Months later, a letter arrived at the bar. Inside was a photo of a newborn baby wrapped in a blue blanket, his eyes bright and full of life. On the back, she had written only a few words: "His name is Hope, because that's what you gave us." The bar fell silent as the men stood together, holding on to that single photograph, a reminder that sometimes the toughest hearts are the ones that carry the most grace.